Hello, and welcome back to 100% Real with Ruby. Today, I have Alan, who apparently likes fish sticks, although I don't really know what they are. But it's protein, so there we go. But he is amazing at putting the complex into the simple, which something I've been doing over the years as well, which you've noticed on my Instagram, is everything's really simplified. And I used to be the one complicating everything. And over the years, realized that it's this simple shit that people need to hear over and over again. So we're going to be talking about behavior and action based stuff that will actually help you not only get unstuck, but get you the results and keep you the results. And we'll also talk a little bit more about the training and the nutrition around that. But something that has come up a lot is people treat fitness, they treat health as like this on and off switch because they go from one extreme to the next extreme, but there's no in between. So it's easy to flick the switch off. So with Alan here today, I'm going to let him take it off with that.
Well, as far as an on and off switch goes, I think that more speaks to the fact that people view nutrition and health and dieting as something that they need to do, and then it's done. And I think that that's kind of going into the situation, looking at it in a wrong way to begin with. I mean, if your goal is to actually improve your health, improve your physique, improve your performance, the bad news is that there is no on and off for this. It's literally you turn it on and that is it for the rest of your life. If you want to maintain progress, you need to make changes that tend to incrementally build on themselves and that become part of you and that you sustain for the rest of your life. Because look at this realistically. If you're somebody that wants to lose body fat, you start at, whatever your weight is, 220 pounds, and you lose 50 pounds of body fat and you're feeling really good about yourself. You're very happy. If you start going back to the way that you were eating at 220 pounds, you're going to go back to 220 pounds. And I think that one of the big issues with this is that, I mean, even if you look at the research, nearly 90% of people that are successful in a weight loss diet, a year later, they're right back to where they started. And they're right back to where they started because they didn't go into it understanding that this is a core change. This is not something that is transient. It's not something that's temporary. And if you're looking at this as something that's temporary, like, oh, I just need to get through this, it's not going to be something that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. So I know that that you have some questions later that you wanted to go into on like motivations and stuff like that. But I think that this kind of ties that in really well. People think that motivation is something that they have to get things done. Motivation is one of the least important possible things in changing your health. You don't need to be motivated at all. And that sounds like it's like really negative thinking. Motivation can be an extremely good boost to your fat loss or your physique goals or your performance goals. But what you really need to figure out is why you're committed to making those changes. Because commitment is the thing that is going to take you through those hard times, whether or not you want to go to the gym, whether or not you want to prep your food. If you figure out why you want to do it, how that deep down benefits you, you're going to do it whether you like to or not. Now, in the beginning, you will often find that you are forcing yourself to do these types of things. It's not always easy. And the fact that you have to force yourself to do it doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. But you just do. And when you have motivation, that's a bonus. Anytime that you have motivation, anytime you feel great, anytime you want to get into the gym or you're really enjoying how you're cooking, good. Use that to the best of your ability. When that goes away, and it will go away, it kind of ebbs and flows. When that's low, you remind yourself why you're committed to it and you stick to that. And that's how you build this habit base that you were talking about in the beginning when you brought this question up. Can you go and just grind through with all motivation in the beginning, maybe for a few months? Yeah. But, you start to realize that in everybody that goes on a fitness journey, whether it's to gain muscle or lose fat, realizes that it's going to take a lot longer than they had first hoped. And when you realize that it takes a lot longer than you first hope, you start to get that, oh man, is this really worth it? Is this grind the thing for me? That's where you start to fall back on, okay, Why am I doing this? How will this benefit my life? The motivation is low right now, so I start to go on autopilot. I've been going into the gym, periodically, and making a habit of this, and then you start to sit back on your habits. The bad news is it doesn't always become something that you find super enjoyable, the process itself, but you can find benefits in what the process provides for you. Maybe you hate going and working out. I mean, Muhammad Ali was famous for this. He said that he hated every single day of training, but he loved winning and he loved being a champion. And you can use that too. You can say, man, I don't love going to the gym, or I don't love lifting weights, but I love how it makes me feel. I love how I can play with my kids. I love how I can keep up with people that are 10 years younger than me. I love how I feel. I love how it makes me sleep. So whether or not you fall in love with fitness or cooking itself, you can find parts of the whole situation that you can appreciate and use that as your crutch when you need to, and resort back to your commitment.
Yeah, it's when we focus so much on losing weight quickly and the extremes, it makes us feel like there's only this one way of doing things. And like you said, it's a core change. And if you're only thinking there is this one way of doing things and you need to go extreme, that's not changing anything at your core, because you're only focusing on the outcome, and that isn't going to make it sustainable. And it's so easy to be like, I just want to hurry up and lose all this weight, so I want to go to the extremes. But the thing is, not only is life unpredictable, but in saying that life is unpredictable, you fall to the level of your habits, you fall to the level of your systems. And there are very apparent saboteurs that exist, like emotional eating, maybe not being able to control ourselves in the office at work. Like, there are these things that we have to first nail down before we decide to go any other extreme. Like, it's a step-by-step process. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about what it is that you feel is the biggest barrier to making these changes, and how important it is to look at the habits and the systems we develop to actually facilitate the process. And
So I think that there's three steps to any habit, and I think that it's extremely important to understand the three steps to every habit. Every habit is made up of three things. And this is good and bad habits. And knowing this, you can reinforce your good habits, and you can alter your supposed bad habits to be more productive in what you're trying to achieve. So it starts off with, you get a reminder. So there is some kind of reminder for every cue that you do in a daily life. And maybe it is, you have a stressful day at work. And when you have a stressful day at work, you normally reach for like a donut or something like that when you come home. Maybe it's when you have a kid and you make them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich during the day, and maybe you eat a couple bites of that peanut butter and jelly sandwich because you're making it. And so you have this reminder, and keeping a food diary is one of the best ways that we all talk about. I mean, most coaches talk about keeping a food diary in some way or another, because it helps you identify these reminders. So then you have a reaction to that reminder, and the reaction is the way that you respond to that reminder. And that can be both good and bad. But knowing that you have a reaction allows you to adjust that reaction. You identify the reminder and you adjust that reaction to be more productive in your life. So if your normal reminder is, well, whenever I get home from work, there's a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever donut place is near your business. When I drive by that, I'll stop in and I'll get 3 donuts. Well, we've realized that your goal is fat loss, and that reminder is kind of triggering this bad behavior that is a habitual bad behavior. So you change things up. You might be able to change the way that you go back home from work. You might be able to change. You might be able to change what you reach for instead. So you start to bring an apple to work, and then you start eating an apple on the car ride home, and that alleviates that craving that you have for the donut. And that essentially changes the reward for that reminder. And if you change the reward for that reminder, it allows you to build a new set of habits. So you take that anatomy of a habit and you make it work for yourself. And if you didn't know how that was built, you could feel like you're struggling and have no way to go. You're like, you know what? I drive by that Dunkin' Donuts, or I drive by that Krispy Kreme, and I just don't have any answers. And I don't know what to do there. Well, if you start looking at it as, okay, well, what's triggering it first off? How can I respond differently? And how can that new reward reinforce a different type of habit? I think that that's really beneficial, when trying to adjust these things, because if you don't know that, you feel lost completely.
You need to first become aware, and above all, it, it's a lot of it's a lot of struggle for people to take ownership of these things, because we like to like push it aside and say, oh no, that's a failure, or we like to be in denial and say, like, whatever it is that we want to blame it on, or say, oh no, there's probably something, like when we do want to take ownership, it's like, oh, I need to find the root cause of this. And then we try to dig deeper into who we are, who we were, and try to like get a long history of everything instead of looking forward to like, where can we be? Just stay in the now. Look at what you just did. And something that I keep saying is, you need to have an if then process. It's like, know where you might trip up, but that isn't enough, because you need to know what to do if you were to trip up. What's an alternative that you can do? But something that we both talk about is that we are going to fail. And if you haven't listened to my first episodes around like episode 101, 103, something like that, I talk about the habits we have now as cables in our brain. They're really thick cables, and that's what the electricity is going through. And it's going like, they're stagnant there. It's almost like when you have like vessels and blood vessels and nerves in your body, like they're stagnant there. If you keep passing the signal through there, they're going to stay strong. And you have to actually start to form new cables. And it takes a lot of repetition, a lot of practice, a lot of energy, because electricity is energy. So yes, you're going to have to put energy goes where focus flows. That's where you need to go. And over time, it's going to get bigger and bigger. These may start to shrink, but they're never going to go away. So
I actually have that's a good analogy. And I actually have one too that I use with my clients. And I think that if people can kind of hear these different ways, they can kind of get an idea that works for them, right? Because maybe some works for some people, maybe some works for another. What I like to discuss this as is cravings. We're normally talking about cravings, right? Because usually it's controlling, hyper palatable foods that people really want to eat. And that's often what throws people off, right? And so what I like to do, and I actually did a YouTube video where I broke this down last week, where I talk about cravings as a kid throwing a tantrum. And so when you have a kid throwing a tantrum, if you have a child and they're losing their mind and they're throwing a complete tantrum, the answer to the tantrum is not to give them what they want. Because if you give them what they want, that teaches them that the tantrum works. That teaches them that if they want the donut, you're going to give it to them. So there's multiple ways that you can address that and just treat it as a child throwing a tantrum. You can go cold turkey. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to wait 20 minutes and I'm going to give this some time, and maybe the tantrum will calm down. And in most cases, it does. In other cases, maybe the tantrum doesn't calm down. So you break out a list of substitutions. And this is something that I'm sure that you work with. This is something that I work with my clients. And I will ask them, okay, I want you to make a list of 5 substitutions. These are activity substitutions. They can be food substitutions, but I would like at least the majority to be activity substitutions. So when you have a craving for a specific food, figure out some things that you can do, and they must be readily available. You must be able to do them. They must be either enjoyable or productive in some way. And they must mean something to you. So if we have a list of 5 and they carry this in their wallet or on a notepad on their phone, anytime they have that craving, they can wait the 20 minutes. They can look at this substitution list and they can say, okay, well, I decided that when I'm having these cravings, I can either do some work, because that work might not be fun, but it might be productive, and then de-stress my life later because I'm getting it done. You could read a book, you could play video games, you could go for a walk, which also increases your NEAT. So double bang for your buck. But the important thing is that you have these options ready, because if you don't have these options ready, when you have that craving, you're going to be in an extremely emotional type of situation. And in extremely emotional types of situation, you will not think straight. And that's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. That is just the way that it is. So, learn from, experienced people that kind of go through this day in and day out with hundreds of people, and figure out these tips and tricks so you can incorporate them in your life and make your life a hell of a lot easier. If you have these things written down, you won't forget it. You'll be able to pull these in. And over time, you start to change that reaction to the reminder that you're getting. And again, that's how you build new habits.
I shared an audio to my story the other day, and there was a little clip in a podcast I was listening to that's like, people are so easy to switch on Netflix or switch on the TV and watch an hour or so of mindless TV, but they won't commit an hour or less to listening to a podcast or someone who's been through the things, or listening to someone talk about getting through things that they once struggled with, or someone who's already a master at that craft. And what I love about that is we have these soundtracks in our head. Like a lot of the time we tell ourselves, oh, I can never have one Tim Tam. I have to have the whole Tim Tam tray, or Oreos. I don't know if you have Tim Tams there, but Tim Tams.
We actually do now. I lived in, I think you know this, I lived in Sydney for a year in 2009. When I lived in Sydney, they did not have Tim Tams in the States. And now they started bringing them into grocery stores, and particularly in Hawaii, where we are, because I'm kind of halfway between the mainland and where you are. We've got Tim Tams everywhere, which is great.
Yeah.
Maybe not for my clients, but it's great for me.
I never really liked Oreos. Oreos are bleh, but Tim Tams.
Oh, they're pretty bland.
They are, and I don't like the cream in between, but Tim Tams are, they're just different. And see, this is the thing, like you can talk about food and all of a sudden you start wanting food. Like that's the thing. It's there is just so much out there that makes it so hard to even fathom this whole, oh, I want to intuitively eat. Like there is no real intuitive eating in a world that's full of these palatable foods.
I have you've probably heard me talk about this before. I have kind of a the words intuitive eating make me a little bit butthurt, and the words intuitive eating make me a little bit butthurt because I don't love it. And I think that if you are in a conversation where you're telling a person to be intuitive with their eating, it's generally because they've struggled with eating in the past. And if we've struggled with eating in the past, that means the way that we intuitively eat doesn't work for whatever our goal is. So intuitive eating is not the answer. And I know that this is going to be a big semantics argument, and you will really divide fitness professionals about this. But I think more informed or educated eating is the right way that we should go. And again, this could be semantics. But the way that people normally eat is often the reason that they're in the position that they're in, that they're struggling with what they're struggling with. So what we need to do is we need to adjust intuitive eating. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with, not weighing food or anything like that, but you certainly have to set up some sort of guidelines. There's no just go off and eat how you feel like you should eat. That doesn't exist. That's just like giving a kid a gun and being like, good luck, because if they've had these issues, they're not qualified to do this. If you've got a guy that's always been lean, I mean, maybe he has the choices that he makes are roughly in line with his caloric intake. Maybe he doesn't like sweets. Like for me, I don't eat sweets. And this is not something that I'm bragging about. It's just, I find a lot of guys are like this.
I don't like sweets.
We don't eat sweets a whole lot. I just don't like it. But like I'll eat cheese, or I'll eat like nachos or a cheesesteak or something like that. And so desserts aren't a problem for me. I never want to reach for that type of stuff. But then I've learned that I need to be a little bit conscious around some higher fat, higher salt foods. And learning these things, it's not intuitive for me to avoid these, but it's an educational thing that I got through by having the food diary, figuring out, what works for me, what doesn't. And there are certain situations, this is another thing that I really want to touch on with intuitive eating. Telling a person that they cannot have a food is not necessarily wrong. Now, I want to put a caveat on that. because if I don't put a caveat on that, it's a really bad piece of advice. The caveat is, say that I talk to you and you tell me that Tim Tams are a bad thing for you because you overeat them, right? And you're a new client and you're working with me. And I say, okay, so we've identified Tim Tams as a trouble or a trigger food for you. Why don't we take Tim Tams out of your diet completely for 4, 6, 8 weeks? Allow you to eat different foods and tell you that we will reintegrate Tim Tams as you start to feel that you are more comfortable eating these foods with control. Now, I'm okay with doing that, but I want to tell you that we're doing this with a time frame, because people can get through things with time frames. If I'm saying like, you'll never eat Tim Tams again, immediately your mind starts to rebel. You're like, but when can I have Tim Tams? Because I want them. If I say 6 weeks, we're not going to have any, then we'll reconvene, we'll get back together, and then we'll see how you're doing. Most of the situations that I do this with my clients, they will sit down and they'll go, I'm okay, I'll try it. They know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We get to 6 weeks and I say, okay, well, do you want to have Tim Tams in your diet? And they're like, you know what? I'm doing okay without it. And we're like, great, perfect, problem solved. Now, if they want to bring it back into play, we can bring it back into play, but you want to bring it back into play in a controlled sort of environment. So they tell you that they are feeling better about it. They're feeling more control over the situation. They had their detox. It's kind of like a mental detox type thing, from the feeling the need to have it all the time. And you say, okay, well, let's try it this week. Let's have 2 Tim Tams. Which day is most important to you? Most people will be like, well, I'm off on Saturday, I want to kind of relax. Have 2 Tim Tams that day. That's it. Write it down, enjoy it, and we'll move on. And most of the times those people will find that it increases their overall adherence, because they know that they're going to get those, and so they can stay away from those things at other times. And they're incrementally moving away from that situation where they don't have control over that food. And it's always great to see them get there.
See, this is the thing where you need to know what advice is right for you, even when someone just says, just eat the donut, because there's so much shit out there that says if you have a trouble food or trigger food, you need to actually eat the food.
Just have one. That's it is the absolute worst advice that a person can give. And anytime somebody says that, I'm like, this person does not actually work with clients. Anyone that thinks that you can take a trigger food and tell a person to just have one and then you'll be fine, you're completely ignoring the emotional and psychological mindset of the people that are having those issues. It's like telling somebody who's depressed, hey, just be happy. Okay, like I've had these issues for like 10 years. Like, you can't tell me just be happy. Like, let's work our way through this problem and then build there. And the way that I put it is, just have a donut is the end goal. That's not the answer. And if we're trying to pass just have a donut off as the answer, we're really doing a disservice to people, because we're minimizing how difficult that is to people. Now, it might not be difficult for, Captain America bodybuilder, like, I eat boiled chicken and broccoli for every meal, so just don't have that, or just get one and then you're fine. But like, for a normal person that has been fighting with this emotionally, and usually it's for years, people diet on and off the diet roller coaster. There needs to be a different way, and the different way involves, generally, in my opinion, a detox period of sorts, and then reintegrating that type of food, if they so choose, in a stepwise manner.
The biggest thing here, which it's like my clients struggle with this a lot, is the actual communication. Like, you can't expect to fix your issues with the same mindset and the same everything that created it. Like, you have a coach for a reason. If you have a coach, you need to have that communication open to help you through these problems. Because if you're coming to a situation with everything you've already had and not having that outside help to get you through it with a different perspective, different mindset, different everything, you're going to keep repeating the same shit, because that's the soundtrack that you have in your head. And you said something amazing there too, because there are so many people out there that make us seem like we're like these dieting culture kind of people because we're saying don't eat the thing. But I have an example of a client who every single time she opened a peanut butter jar, there was only half left by the end of the friggin' 10-minute setting. And it's like, well, let's just not have any peanut butter in your diet whatsoever. It's like, that is not restriction. That is controlling yourself until you can do more. And we didn't introduce peanut butter into a diet. The substitution was peanut butter, PB2, the peanut butter powder. And
that's a great idea.
The only time that the peanut butter came back in was about a year and a little bit later, where she literally could have peanut butter everywhere and not even want to touch the jar. There was a time she didn't even want peanut butter in her diet anymore because she was fine with having her other options. Like, it's not a physical thing, it's a mental thing. And you're coming to this situation with years of a dieting mindset, years of chasing fat loss. You need to give yourself time to be okay with that food. Like, you know me, you've known me for years, and you know that cereal was my weakness. There is cereal in the cupboards right now, and it's not locked up with a key. And I'm not even touching that cereal. Whereas before, if there was cereal in the house, I'd friggin' shovel it in my face. I couldn't have a little bit of cereal in my diet because I needed to have like a 300-gram bowl. And now I'm happy.
I think so. There are certainly different types of cravings, and there is hedonic craving, which is the emotional type of craving that we're particularly addressing. And then there is physical craving, because maybe you're just physically hungry. And I like to point this out to people too, because it's a good way to kind of center yourself and understand what you're dealing with. And I've heard this, that I didn't make this one up, but I've heard this from a lot of different coaches, and I think it's very valid. Do an apple test. If you are sitting there and you're like, all you're doing is thinking about food, think about it and say, would an apple be something that I would want to eat right now? And would that solve my problem? If the answer is no, assuming you're not disgusted by apples, if the answer is no, then this isn't physical hunger. This is emotional hunger or hedonic hunger. This is, you are not craving food because you're hungry. If it's hungry, you've got hunger pangs in your stomach. It's mostly located in your stomach. It's growling. It's kind of loss of focus when you're thinking. If you have hedonic or emotional hunger, this is located in the mind. You are focusing on specific food items. You are focusing on specific tastes. You're focusing on textures. You're focusing on an experience. You are not thinking any type of food will work. If any type of food will work, you're hungry. So have some Greek yogurt, have a protein shake, have, lean meat and veggies, have whatever it is. If you are, if you're saying only a brownie will fix this, well, this is an emotional hunger, and you're choosing that because of some reminder back to the habits and the cues that you get that we talked about earlier. You've gotten some reminder, and that reminder might have been your daily routine. It might have been maybe you had a stressful day. It might have been you want to celebrate, but maybe the celebration is not big enough to warrant actually having the donut. I mean, if it's your birthday or Christmas or a special holiday, yes, please enjoy yourself. But before you do that, say, okay, I know that this is a special occasion. I'm okay with having this. I plan on having 2 donuts, and that's where I'll stop. You made it before it was an emotional decision. Great, enjoy it. If this is a Tuesday, there is a difference between celebrating Tuesday and celebrating your birthday. So you really need to prioritize, how important is this to you? Is this a physical hunger, or is this an emotional or hedonic hunger? And if this is a daily thing, do you want to reinforce that hedonic hunger? And the first thing that comes to mind for me was, I had a client just last week that said he has problems because he cooks his kids' food, and every time he cooks his kids' food every single day, he eats some of the kids' food. Now, if your problem is something that you're doing on every single day, the answer is never have a bite and move on, because you're reinforcing a bad habit that you're dealing with on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is not, you got a promotion. This is not, it's my friend's birthday. This is not, it's the Super Bowl or the World Cup. There are special times that you can even go all out, because a single day of a ton of calories is not going to make you fat, just like a single salad is not going to make you thin. So look at what you've got coming up over the next month. Are there special days that I think that I really want to moderate less and indulge more? Nothing wrong with that. Do not get down on yourself after that happens. Do not be guilty because you looked at this, you made a plan. But at the same time, be realistic with yourself when you see, well, Brenda, who I don't really like from work that much, wants to go out for drinks. Now, not to be insulting, maybe have one drink, but that doesn't mean that you need to get, 3 or 4 flights of margaritas just because you're out with a colleague that, might not mean that much to you in your whole overall life.
Yeah, it's, and also with the be realistic, it's be realistic with your percentage of consistency and your percentage of actually hitting the check boxes, because like your results are dictated on how many of those days you're gonna get a green percentage on, not a red percentage on. And I say this as well, I'm like, birthday, Christmas, Easter, I don't give a rat's ass what you eat on those days. They're 3 days in the year. The rest, take it as it comes, because you don't know when you're going to plan a holiday. You don't know when your kid's going to chuck a tantrum and you're going to have to like have a whole bloody Lulu dance outside of your house and get shit outside. I don't even know where that description came from, but I was thinking of a hula hoop. But it's like, you need to be aware of the fact that it's not, it's the accumulation of things, and it's not an on or off switch. It only because I made a tweet that I was going to put up today or tomorrow on this, but it's, if it can't be the best option or a great option, make it the better option. And if it can't be the better option, make it a good enough option. And that's literally what I wrote on my tweet, which will be up when this comes out. But like, it's not about being perfect. There is no such thing as perfect. And when people say, I just want to get this right, what does right mean to you?
You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it right. You're going to fail. And I'm going to say that again. You're going to fail. But there's a difference between failing temporarily and failing permanently. Failing temporarily is part of a successful fat loss and fitness journey. Everybody has failed. I went all of 2021 with a broken neck and a partially torn MCL and ACL. I'm not progressing during that year. Now, 2022, things are starting to heal up. I will get back. I will start to do that. Now, what did I do? Just like what Ruby said, you cannot always do all that you want to do. So for 4 months, I couldn't walk. But when that was happening, it was like, okay, well, what can I do? So I controlled what I ate. I controlled when I cooked. I took control where I can. It was even better. My diet was even better during this period, because it was like, well, if I'm not at the gym for an hour and a half, I've got some more time to cook. So this is great. So let's take advantage of this. And I think that the really successful people start to realize that time management is extremely important, one, but when you've kind of gotten that down, doing what you can do is the important thing, and I go through, we have a lot of athletes that have injuries from time to time, and they can't do exactly what they want to do. But then we ask, what can you do? Can you get your knee up? Can you, if you have an issue with your knee, can you work upper body? Can you work on some of these other things? So your time isn't at a complete standstill. And if you look at it in a way that of the what can I do type of situation or type of mentality, life becomes a hell of a lot easier, because life is more what can I do than I'm doing everything I possibly can.
Yeah, and you simply can't do that. I wrote that in a status too. It's like, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. And this month marks the 7th month that I'm dealing with a hamstring injury. And it's only this month that I've been able to start doing leg curls. And last month that I've started being able to do hinges, like Romanian deadlifts and hyperextensions with weight without it actually hurting me. But I'm still struggling to do leg curls. And a lot of people are quick to let something like that let them down. And I remember 2019, I injured my lat, and I'm a deadlifter. I couldn't deadlift properly with that lat injury, and I let that take me down a really dark spiral. But this is the thing, I heard this as well on a different podcast. It's high performers don't talk about all of their successes and how well they're doing, because high performers are probably the ones that have learned the most. They have failed the most. That's why they're successful. And it is so true. Like,
well, that's the other thing with what I was getting at with, you will fail, but that doesn't mean that you failed permanently, because these people that end up being really successful, they tend to fail a lot, in the short term. And the big difference between them and others is that they're resilient and they learn from where they failed and how they can improve, and how to prevent that in the future. So, over time, these guys become really great resources for helping to alter, your own plans, and getting some ideas, because they've been through it all.
That goes back to what I said before, and honestly, take that advice. Like, yeah, you might want to tuck into Netflix, but it actually pays a lot of benefit to listen to people who have been through the thing or are where you want to be, talking about their like vulnerability and stuff like that. Like, it's not all what you see on Instagram. Dig deeper into what got them to where they are and listen to things that they say, like follow them. It's and the whole thing is, if you want to get to this place, then you have to do the things in the process and learn the process in itself. But something else you said was, you need to have a high net to fall on. There's the patience that goes into this. There's the patience to learning from the failures. But something you do talk a lot on that I want you to dig into more, which I wrote down, is people who find it hard to be selfish and sort out their priorities. You will always feel constantly overwhelmed. And this is when, if you tie it into the start of the whole conversation, this is those sabbateurs where it's like it's an on or off switch, because you find it hard to be selfish. You find it hard to sort out your priorities. So your sleep goes down, auditing your time and energy goes down. And then you complain about your lack of results from the work you're not doing, because you're not being accountable, you're not being communicative, which is an important part of the process if you have a coach. But even with yourself, you're not being accountable, because all of a sudden life's going on. So how would you address that?
So I think that there are three common traits that people need to have, and you should sit down if you're somebody that is planning on hiring a coach, particularly if they're a good coach, which means they cost a decent amount of money. I mean, my rates aren't cheap, but they're not cheap because you get a lot, and I should be able to spend a lot of time with you. And I feel like Ruby's the same way, and any other good coach is going to be the same way. But there are three common traits that I would say that every person needs to have to start. And if you have these, great, then we move on to the next thing. So you have to be willing to learn. You have to be self-motivated. Notice what I said there. You have to be self-motivated. One of the issues that I find with a lot of people that sign up with coaches is they sign up because they believe that a coach will motivate them. That's not how it works. A coach cannot give you intrinsic motivation. A coach can give you some extrinsic motivation. We can praise you for what you're doing. We can point out the good things. But if deep down you don't feel a reason, or if you don't know a reason why you want to do this, it doesn't matter what a coach says to you. Those praises, the way that the coach can show you that you're progressing, that lasts weeks to months at best, and then just kind of fades away because it's not something that's important to you. Maybe hearing, "Oh, good job," is a nice little boost, but it just doesn't last. So self-motivation is key. And I know that a lot of people kind of take that in a bad way. They're like, "Oh, but I really want my coach to motivate you." It just doesn't work that way. The last thing that a person has to have is they need to take responsibility for their current situation. And that's not to say that you should be down on yourself, or that you should be ashamed, but you should sit back and look at your current situation, and you should say, okay, well, what part of this is my fault? Like, am I going out and am I getting, 8 drinks every Saturday night, and then 4 more drinks every Sunday, and then eating a pizza Sunday night? Like, if you can identify that, yeah, there's your problem right there, or at least a significant chunk of your problem. So some of these things need to be adjusted if you want to get where you say that you want to get with your physique and performance goals. But having said that, once you get past all of that, the biggest thing a person can do is work on mindset shift, and part of that is learning to say no. And learning to say no is a very important skill that people are, one, uncomfortable about, and two, they really don't want to do it. There's going to be times where you have social obligations, and learning to say no to certain parts of that social obligation may be the right move for you because it doesn't support who you're trying to become. If there's a bake sale, it doesn't mean that you need to go and try every other item that's out at the bake sale. Sure, bake some for your own, bring it in. If you feel like you want chocolate, have a protein shake. You've now gotten something that's that's chocolatey, that allows you to quench that craving a little bit without going overboard, and go about that. And if you look at it from a mindset of empowerment rather than a mindset of restriction, that's where this really starts to take hold for people, and it becomes an intrinsic motivation, because that's what we want to move towards. We want this to be meaningful to you as a person. And so if you look at these foods and you're saying no, you're learning to say no to these types of things, but in your mind you're saying no because you're choosing to eat a certain way. You're choosing to eat the protein shake. You're not restricting yourself from having the donuts or the brownies or whatever it is. You're choosing to eat the protein shake because that's what you want to do, because that's what's supporting what you want to become and who you want to become. And I think that these distinctions in the mindset of surrounding food and food choices is really what gives you that benefit as far as building that proper relationship with food. Because if you're always sitting there thinking, oh, I can't have that, or I can't have that, it's going to be a long road, man. It's never going to quite be where you want it to be. You're going to look at Deborah down the street and she does not struggle because she eats, a grilled chicken salad because she likes the grilled chicken salad because it allows her to, have the body that she wants.
See, this is something that everyone listening to this needs to apply to every single thing in their life. Because if it's, oh, I have to do this, so you're treating things like a chore. I talk about this endlessly. If you're going to hate the process and be so outcome driven, where is the enjoyment in the process? Like, you can't aim for, oh, I'll be happy when, or all this stuff.
Yeah.
Outcome. You need to actually find the joy in the process, because you will never be happy at an outcome if you hated the way there, because you just lived an unfulfilled life and you didn't really create anything in that process that's going to sustain it after there, because you'll either flop off or you'll forever be chasing, okay, what's next? What's next?
Well, even like I talked about before, you don't have to love the process as long as you positively reinforce the process. And an example of that is, okay, I don't love eating, whatever it is that I don't love eating that's supposed to be healthy, but I do like how I feel afterwards.
Yeah,
And so by focusing how you feel afterwards, you can support that habit and actually gain something positive that is meaningful to you.
I actually love that you interjected there, because that's actually something really important for people to realize. You're not always going to love what you're doing. You're not always going to want to be making those choices. And there are going to be times when you really don't want to show up. And I've had many times. Alan has had many times. We're human. Like, we've had times where we struggled, and it's just less frequent now. But when we started, we would have had plentiful days. And I'm sure you can relate to that as well. But when we start, we are going to hate a lot more things than we enjoy, because we haven't yet attached it to how we feel. We haven't given it enough time to filter through. And this is where it's like, yeah, you can have that, like that, okay, this is really, really hard thing. But if you attach it to a purpose, which is, it's helping me feel this way, which then you link back to your life. I show up with kids better. I'm better at work. I have more energy. I feel more like,
yeah.
You need to have purpose in the journey, because then you will go through the phases where you're enjoying it and not enjoying it, because you're process driven in the fact that, okay, now you see how it's relating to your life. You just quit your job because now you're going to go for one that's going to give you a higher salary, or whatever they call it these days, because they don't pay frigging yearly salaries much anymore. But kind of tying this in, why is it harder with, like, because we were talking about the whole yo-yoing thing and being an on or off switch. Why is it harder to lose body fat the second time if we've dieted before? And why is it harder to then see the results if we keep going on this yo-yo loop? And how can we tie that together with everything we just said?
Well, I mean, it's harder from the aspect of if you're leaner, losing significant amounts of body fat is always more difficult. Well, losing scale weight is obviously more difficult. You've got a lot more to lose when you're larger. So if you're coming back and you're slightly smaller, it's going to be less significant body fat. And a lot of people take that as, okay, something's not working right this time because last time I lost 5 or 8 pounds every 2 weeks, and now I'm only losing two or four. And you've seen my infographic that I put out there that shows the expected rates of weight loss, and I put that out there because I want people to see, if you're doing this correctly, you're probably losing a lot less weight every week than what you thought you would. Now, going into this a second time, it almost depends a lot on the situation involved. Maybe you didn't have that much time at maintenance before you decided to go back down and into it. Maybe you have more stress that's going on. Maybe you have greater expectations for yourself, and all those can add in. From a calorie perspective, going in and dieting again isn't technically harder outside of some of the differences that metabolic adaptation makes. So if you're a slightly lighter person, your energy requirements are lower, so you're going to have to take in less food. But that comes with the territory of being a leaner individual. If you hadn't taken enough time off in between, and this is a big issue with people that are chronically trying to lose weight, if you hadn't taken off enough time in between your attempts and you stay relatively low, certain things like your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which means all of your movement during the day, will stay low. It'll stay depressed. Your hunger will stay ramped up. And so what these people find that are in this chronic yo-yo dieting or roller coaster dieting up and down is they never allow their bodies to feel comfortable enough to say, okay, I can start burning some extra energy without even thinking about it. I don't need to crave foods quite as much. And the outcome is that these people basically become sedentary. They just sit on a couch and then they crave food. And that's a bad combination to have, that they might not have had that first time that they went from not trying to diet and then dieted down. And then, trying to come back and diet a second time, they might have that adaptation still in play. And so staying consistent becomes much more difficult. So the answer is, if you're in one of those situations, I find that if people that you're working with are in a chronic diet type situation, I actually have these questions in my intake forms. When was the last time that you dieted? For how long? And what did you get out of that? What did you experience? And if they're telling me that they struggled, the best answer a lot of times is to bring that person to maintenance for 2 or 3 months and let them just work on performance.
Guys, he said months, not 2 or 3 weeks. Like,
months.
People go into it
and
a couple weeks, like, can we go into fat loss phase now?
Yeah, and it's you're going to slow yourself down. And actually, one of the ways that I talk about this with people is, do you want me to make this Australian relevant?
Yes.
Okay. So you live in Sydney. You want to drive to Perth. You don't get in your car, and you don't get in your Holden. And I'm making it this as Australian as possible. You don't get in your Holden and fill it with petrol and then go 120 kilometers an hour west and hope to get there as fast as possible. What's going to happen is you're going to run out of gas, and that car's going to break down, and you're going to be in the middle of the outback, and there's going to be a whole bunch of weird people that are not really going to help you out there.
And kangaroos.
And kangaroos. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stop at, what's an area between there? Is it Alice Springs is between the two roughly?
Yeah, Adelaide.
So let's say that that's a midpoint in your journey. You go there, you stop, you spend 20 minutes getting petrol, and then you get back on the road and you go. Now, what we do when we're dieting is we look at that and we say, oh, I'm stopped. Nothing's happening. This is terrible. Something's happening. You're refueling and you are getting ready to get back on the road and make it to Perth. If you try to gun that engine all the way from Sydney to Perth, you're going to destroy your car. So be smart about this. Look at your maintenance phase as I am getting gas and I can't get gas super quickly. I need to let it fill the tank, and filling the tank might be 2 to 3 months. 2 weeks generally is not enough to have a full reset of that. But during that time period, it's not wasted. You will be working on those habits that we talked about. We will be working on the consistency that we talked about. We will be working on strength and performance. And you might even build a good bit of muscle during that time period, particularly if you're new to training. And so none of what you're doing here is a waste of time. It just doesn't feel like you're moving in the exact direction that you feel like you should be moving immediately. But you came in with a situation that wasn't optimal for moving. You came in with an empty tank of gas. And so you are addressing that empty tank of gas, you are filling up, and it's going to take time. Now, one of the biggest issues that I find when we start going into this, and I'm trying to figure out a formal way to work around this. When I tell people that we're going to put them at maintenance, what people hear in their mind is, you can eat like an asshole. Really? Because we're not in a cut.
I get the, oh my God, you're going to get fat.
Yeah. And if you're at maintenance, you're not getting fat. If you've been in a chronic dieting situation, you may go up 5 pounds, maybe 8 pounds at most, if it's done correctly. However, that's not body fat. Your body is refilling with muscle glycogen stores. You're holding on to some water because you now have more fiber and more carbs in your system. You're getting stronger. This isn't fat. You're going to shed that immediately the second that you get back down into a cut. But you need to come to grips with the fact that living a life in a permanent cut is not only realistic, it's really bad for your health. And so sometimes coaches like Ruby or I will look at the situation that our clients are in, and we'll know that 3 months at maintenance is the right move for them. And it's problematic to get a person to look at that and say, okay, I want to be at really high adherence for this maintenance, because maintenance to people says we're not doing anything, but we are doing something. And being at maintenance and learning to be adherent and consistent is extremely important, because that's what allows you to get back on the road.
It's also built like, it's not the fact that all of a sudden you failed because you're not focusing on fat loss anymore. This is where you really need to, like, I heard an analogy the other day. It's like, if you're just going to do eating less and all this cardio as your approach, that's just like running the engine. That's already a really small engine where you haven't spent any time actually building a bigger engine to have more capacity. That's only going to take you so far, and you probably won't even make it to Adelaide to start with. So especially in a freaking Holden these days, like smashed up, like, come on. So you need to actually build that engine first, and this is where you actually focus on building strength. You focus on eating enough for long enough and building muscle for long enough to actually have a bigger engine to take you further. And it becomes a lot more effortless. Like, these graphics, these whatever is out there that says you're going to lose, like, you can lose this much every single week, that shit is not applicable to you if you've been a chronic dieter. If you've been a chronic dieter, that is only applicable, and if you're not consistent enough, that is only applicable to you if you actually do the right things, you spend time away from dieting so that you can actually effectively lose fat. And think about this. If you actually lose, say, 1 kilo a month, and you lose 1 kilo a month linearly for the rest of your life, and that's all you're chasing, it doesn't work that way. Like, it just seems so stupid in your head, and people believe that.
I mean, it's unpredictable. And I remember that Bill Campbell did and for those that don't know, he's a nutrition and fitness researcher. And he did a study out of University of Southern Florida, and they took everybody and they used the best equations that they possibly could to tell, maintenance level calories, and they put them all on the same diets, and they followed them for 16 weeks. And they had predicted amounts of weight loss for each person based on their body composition and based off of the calorie deficit they were putting them on. And none of them came out to equal the predicted weight loss. And so if you think that you're going to ask your coach, oh, I'm 170 pounds, can I get to 150 pounds in 4 months? The coach has no idea. This is extremely dependent on how, your genetics, how consistent you are with this. And when you were talking about losing X amount of weight every 2 weeks or every month, sometimes the right mentality there is, okay, is this going in the direction that I want it to be going? And if it is, rack that up as a win. Don't get discouraged because it's not double what you thought it should be, or it's not what Rick down the street got when he tried it, because you're not Rick down the street. And so, these things need to be put into perspective. And if you start to look at the long-term trends, you'll see what's working and what's not.
And you'll also notice that the strongest, not really the strongest, but those that actually focus on being strong and putting on muscle and building their body have more success getting that dream body that all these people forever chasing fat loss get. Like, why are there still people forever chasing fat loss? Why are there still people complaining they can't get results? Because they have the same mindset every single time.
They do that because chasing fat loss seems like a more straightforward answer. The problem is what they don't understand. This is most people, and especially people that would potentially be considered skinny fat. You're skinny fat because you don't have the underlying muscle to either just be fat or just be lean. And so the answer for most of them is to build muscle for 12 to 18 months prior to even worrying about going into a full cut. And it seems too long, and it seems counterintuitive, and it seems like, and I can guarantee you that a lot of people will feel like they look worse before they look better. And it can be very scary, particularly for females, to see the scale go up. And that's not being sexist. That's just personal experience. And maybe you have a different personal experience. Maybe you see the men that are the, ones that are like, oh no, the scale's going up. But that's perfectly fine. So it's an individual thing. But one of the things that people need to realize is that this idea that you have of this beautiful body that's lean generally has a significant amount of lean muscle. And that's what's giving that body shape. And so if you have never really worked out before, the proper answer is to put you onto a muscle building routine for 12, 16, 18 months prior to even worrying about cutting down. And very, very few people can wrap their heads around it, because all they do is they're like, I'm looking worse. I don't think that this program works. And the majority of people will ditch out way before they see the benefits that they would have seen if they would have kept going. And so it's really important to find a coach that you trust and then follow the process. And if the answer is build for a long time, there is no faster way to get you to where you want to be than to get over these difficult hurdles in the beginning.
And I'm very mindful you need to go soon, but I'm going to keep bringing this up because it just stays in my head. I know people that are very uncomfortable. Well, I know a couple of girls that are very uncomfortable about feeling tight in freaking work pants and jeans, which are bloody restrictive as they are. Like they're not made for the female body in general. And then you see my legs. I'm saying this to you because you actually can, you've known me from the days I looked like a friggin' God knows what. But it's like, I want lean legs like you, Ruby. And my legs look lean. They have striations in them. And people think that they need to diet their way there. But what you don't see is I spent years powerlifting. I spent years lifting heavy ass weight for many reps over a consistent period of time to build muscle. I've been bigger. I've been fatter, so to speak. I've been heavier. I went through those periods to get to where I am now. My legs aren't lean because I dieted my way here. It was the dieting that actually stopped me putting on muscle for freaking like 2 years of my life doing comp prep. I actually lost muscle in that process. It's when I came out of that to do my powerlifting that my legs truly changed.
Well, this is a good time period, I think, and I think that women should be focusing on this in particular. thick is not necessarily a bad thing now. And so getting some new clothes to make yourself feel more comfortable when you're doing a build is probably a good idea. And remind yourself that this isn't the end goal. This is just the path to get to that end goal. And it's just, if you're with a good coach, they'll tell you this is the fastest way that we can possibly get there, the most efficient way that we can possibly get there. And really accept that, because it's going to make your life a lot easier to just say, okay, I'm going to go through this. I know what this is going to feel like. I'm going to feel like I'm eating way too much food, because even I'm 235 pounds and I always feel like I eat way too much food when I'm trying to gain muscle. It's almost nauseating at times. And that's when you're trying to change where your body wants to be, it can feel like that. And so you buy some roomier clothes, and you come to grips with that's the way that it's going to be for a while, and you keep your eye on the fact that this is part of the plan. This is where I want to go, and it makes it a lot easier if you accept that in the beginning.
I love that to pretty much sum up everything we said, but I'm going to quote one of your infographics to sum it up on a different note, and that's accept that you will fail. It's not you may fail. I'm changing that word. Accept that you will fail at any goal, fitness, fat loss, whatever it is in the short term. Fail fast and fail quick, because then you'll start to learn, and you'll be able to reroute yourself and gather the confidence to reroute yourself while you still have that initial motivation, because it doesn't mean that you're not improving in that process. You're improving every single time you reroute yourself from failures.
Well, and also I'm a big proponent of people getting coaches, because I think that a lot of times when people feel like they failed, they didn't really fail. I'll have people that have worked with me, and this happens so often. I do a lot of big transformation body comp changes. And so I'll have people that'll lose like 50, 60 pounds, and then they'll have a week that's very difficult and they'll gain 4 pounds back. And they'll be like, it's over. I've ruined it. And I'm like, this is fine. And they're like, why aren't you upset? I'm like, because it's going to happen. Like there's no situation in the world where you're not going to go up in weight at some point, and it's going to happen multiple times. The important thing is how you react to this, and let's look at what you did. And when we go over what they had done and where their practices were, a lot of times, and obviously you're going to have to address this with your clients based on your relationship with your clients, but I tell my clients, and I prep them for this ahead of time, I'll be like, you screwed up here, here, and here. Now, I say that after having a conversation with them where I've told them, I'm going to tell you where you screwed up. But I'm telling you this because I'm on your side. I'm your partner in this. And I want to point these out so we realize where we're getting our trip ups. And then you and I will sit down together and we will brainstorm. Okay, you did this, this, and this. Would you, given another chance, moderate this in some way? Would you change this up in any way? And if you're going through these screw ups and you're doing that, then you're learning progressively on how to adjust this for the future. And so having these screw ups is sometimes a good thing, because it bulletproofs you for later in life, because there's going to be a point where you don't have your coach and you'll be like, oh man, I went through this with my coach. And yeah, I remember I should have done this, this, and this. And then you start to make those notes and you make that change from then on. And so failure is a thing that I think a lot of people look at as a permanent type of situation, but failure never needs to be a permanent situation. Failure is only permanent if you quit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a learning experience.
And you said this in your list of what makes a great client, and that's you need to be willing to learn. You need to actually be willing to learn. Like if you see that you have these failures and you get the screw ups pointed out, instead of not having a response and not trying to work through them, which a lot of people would just avoid or blind eye, you need to address them and get uncomfortable sitting with them so you can work through them, because the more you avoid them, they will keep showing up until you work through them. So
yeah, and I think that it's important too, in defense of clients and people working hard everywhere out there. I think it's important that the coach be empathetic and non-accusatory. But I work this, I mean, I'm kind of a gruff guy. I work this with the same way that I work with my buddies. And I'll be like, okay, dude, you fucked up here. Let's fix this. Let's figure out how we can make this work for you. And then the client should have some back and forth. And as long as you're both working towards the same goal of improvement, you can always come together with a solution. And yeah, sometimes you're going to say, you know what, it was a big celebration and I don't feel bad about how I ate. And then you're like, okay, as a coach, I'll say, okay, well, are you okay with gaining 2 pounds then, or a kilo then? And they'll say, yeah, I am, because I don't normally eat like this, but it was a celebration. And I'll say, perfect. This is exactly how we build a good relationship with food. You gain 2 pounds. You are okay with your actions because you thought this out. And now we will move on and you will lose that kilo again. And so as long as your actions and your expectations are in alignment, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And sometimes that's the case, and if Christmas comes around and you gain 3 pounds, it doesn't matter. There's not much going on. There's not much going on in the rest of January. We'll lose it.
Yeah.
So getting that third person perspective of, let's figure out if this is a screw up. If it is, let's review the situation that happened. How would you change it up, given a second chance? And then we learn from that.
Yeah. You can't fix a problem with the same mindset that created it.
Well, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So if you don't change, your physique, your performance, your mindset, your happiness, your confidence won't change. And I think that a lot of people go into this thinking, I want to be able to get everywhere that I want to be. And, I've heard coaches say, just have one and move on. And I don't feel like I should have to give up any foods that I really enjoy. That's a half truth. You don't have to give up any food. There is technically no food that is restricted or should be restricted in any healthy diet. As a general rule, for certain people, you might find that, yeah, I cannot control myself around potato chips. And then you do that little detox, and then you come back and you meet again and you talk to the client and you say, okay, do you either feel more in control and you want to bring it back into play, or do you not feel in control? And if they say, I don't feel in control, then you talk about, well, would you consider keeping this out of your normal diet regularly then? And as long as that's brought up and that's the decision that the client makes, that's a perfectly valid decision for a client to make. This is saying no because you feel that it benefits your life overall and you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So saying no does have benefit. It just has to have benefit in the right way that doesn't enforce a restrictive mindset, but enforces an empowering mindset of you making that decision to take control of the way that you eat food, and being honest with yourself is all you can do.
Yeah. Because every yes comes with a trade-off. So
Mhm.
that's a perfect way to end all of this. And I think he summed it up perfectly. I don't really need to add anything more to that. This is the fastest way, and the fastest way isn't the end goal. It's a process to the end goal. That was my favorite thing that you said.
Yeah, sometimes be okay with stopping to get gas. You're going to need petrol to make it all the way across the country.
And it's still the fastest way, because otherwise
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like the fastest way, but it is the fastest way. And that's the true meaning that needs to be pushed here, because taking your car until it just is broken down on the side of the road doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way. So I'm going to leave Alan's Facebook group down below and his Instagram down below as well. And if you liked this, give it a little rating above as well, and go and actually review your actions and your behaviors and ask yourself if they are serving you, or if they're keeping you repeating the same pattern over and over again, because nothing changes if nothing changes. So with
That's
that,
right.
thank you for coming on, and I will talk to you all, and you will all listen to me soon.
Thanks, Ruby.